My name is Steve Thompson, and I'm 36 years old. I work for an IT company as a contract employee. After serving as a systems engineer at a major IT firm, I decided to start my own business. Now, I'm training under someone I greatly admire, the current CEO of the company, Morgan Smith. Morgan is 6 years younger than me at 30. She started her own business with friends while still in college, and has built it into one of the most respected companies in the security software testing industry. She's also famous for her skills as a hacker and has leveraged her talent for success, becoming a well-known figure in the industry. I chose the path of entrepreneurship because I admire her. Working under someone I respect is a valuable experience, and I sincerely admire Morgan. One day, I was summoned to her office and received a strange request. "Will you live with me if I pay you?" I was taken aback by the proposition, and my mind went blank for a moment. Morgan, watching my reaction, had a serious look in her eyes. It didn't seem like one of her usual jokes or pranks. Regaining my composure, I immediately responded, "Understood." There was no way I could refuse a request from someone I admired so much. I had no idea what her intention was, but if there was something I could do, I'd do it wholeheartedly. We had built a strong level of trust between us. "I knew you'd answer immediately, Steve," Morgan said with a satisfied smile, sliding a key card to her private apartment across the desk. "Just for a month. The address will be sent to your phone. Let me know if there's anything you need." The only concern I had was my own self-control. Morgan's not just known for her abilities, but also for her beauty, comparable to a movie star. Well, I suppose that's my problem alone. I arrived at the apartment, guided by the address and map Morgan sent. It was a high-end building with a full-time concierge service. I felt a little intimidated knowing I'd be living there for a month. Using the card key, I headed for the designated room. An older gentleman, the concierge, lowered his head as he saw me. I guessed Morgan must have spoken to him beforehand. I nodded back, saying, "I appreciate your help." When I was about to enter the elevator at the end of the foyer, the concierge pointed to another heavy glass door further back, saying, "Over there." I couldn't access that floor without a card key. Beyond the glass door was an elevator exclusively for the higher floors. There was a security guard stationed there, ensuring top-notch security. When I held the card key to the sensor, the elevator door opened with a ding, taking me to a high-rise floor. From the number of doors, I could tell there were few rooms on this floor. The room designated by Morgan was at the end of a long hallway. As I rang the bell, I heard a voice from inside saying, "I'm coming." The front door opened immediately. It seemed dangerous for a woman to live alone like this, but when I raised my head to express concern, the person standing there was not Morgan. "You must be Mr. Steve Thompson. Morgan told me about you." "Please come in," said a girl with a well-formed face and a strange tan. She was barefoot. "Who are you?" I asked, a bit panicked because I thought Morgan would be greeting me. "Didn't Morgan tell you?" "I'm her sister, Grace," she said. She bowed slightly and smiled, leading me to a spacious living room and preparing some tea. Grace said Morgan usually lived here alone and laughed, saying she was a freeloader just like me. Her profession was a photographer specializing in accompanying mountain climbers, and she had just returned to Japan after a long time. "You've been overseas for a while. Did you come back to Japan for any special reason?" I asked casually, but I soon regretted my carelessness. Grace held out her left hand, which was missing the little and ring fingers. "Frostbite," she said, shrugging at my gasp of surprise. "It must have been tough," I said. I was called back by a hysterical Morgan. "I've been told to stay in Japan until I fully recover." "I think you are probably my watchman." I correctly understood the true meaning of the request from Morgan, and so the strange cohabitation of the three of us began. Living together, I noticed that the personalities of these sisters were really opposite. Morgan is always logical and cool, and her beauty makes her feel like a cool beauty. On the other hand, her sister Grace is a wild child, always acting on intuition. She has a face as beautiful as Morgan, but she's not taking good enough care of it, like getting sunburned. Moreover, she is a genius at destroying home appliances. It's so much that I think it's not just a talent. It's hard to believe she's the sister of Morgan, who is at the top of the ID industry. "Steve, the water isn't coming out." "Why?" Today she was struggling in front of the water dispenser. Grace, all you have to do is switch this. Then hot water comes out. It's cute when it's just this level. The other day, for whatever reason, she had water flowing backward and flooded the floor. My computer was also broken in the incident. Morgan compensated me right away, but I remember my mind going blank for a moment. Morgan often came home late, and naturally, Grace and I spent a lot of time alone. I taught Grace how to use the computer, and in turn, Grace told me a lot of stories about the mountains. Looking at the photos Grace took, I started to look forward to hearing about her high-altitude climbing, working in what's called the death zone. After realizing that it was a life-threatening job, I began to feel respect for Grace. Grace started to call me her computer teacher, and she was fond of me. Grace, can I continue looking at yesterday's photos? I called out to Grace, who was about to take a bath. Her photos were piled up in the living room. Go ahead, you can look at anything, I heard Grace's lively reply from the dressing room. After hearing her reply, I reached out for the pile of photos. The vivid navy blue sky, and the cliff cut sharply. The distant mountains are covered in white snow. The contrast of the navy blue and the white is dazzling to the eye. The people in the photos have chapped lips and sunburns, their eyes hidden by goggles, but everyone is smiling. Everyone might just smile naturally when Grace points the camera at them, I thought. They are really warm and good photos. Among them, I found a photo with Grace in it. Grace still looked young, almost like a student. It was probably the base camp for high-altitude climbing. She was embraced by a young man making a peace sign towards the camera. Her left hand still had all 5 fingers perfectly intact. This guy, doesn't he look like you? At some point, Morgan had returned home and was now peering at a photo over my shoulder. The scent of the perfume that Morgan always wears filled the air, and I found myself stiffening with nervousness. I thought he looked like you the first time I saw you. This man, he's Grace's fiancé. He's missing now. She traced the photo with her slim fingers, informing me in a soft voice. The man in the photo had gotten lost during a mountain climb. Nobody has been found yet. He was a solo alpine-style climber, she told me. It's a climbing style that involves quick ascension with light gear, not heavy. It expresses more towards climbing, making it a tougher challenge compared to traditional high-altitude mountaineering. In one winter, he went into the mountains and never came back. From the bathroom, I could hear Grace's humming. I had no idea she had such a sad history. I want you to keep Grace in America, where you can keep your eyes on her in order not to let her go to dangerous places. Morgan's voice was serious. Is it because I look like Grace's fiancé? Upon my query, Morgan nodded with a sorry expression. The reason Morgan chose me for this task was because my face resembled Grace's ex-fiancé. She probably thought I could keep Grace here if I looked exactly like him. Listening to Morgan's reasoning, I felt a twinge of disappointment. Was it towards me or towards Morgan? I just felt my energy draining away. I thought I had been chosen because I was admitted and trusted by Morgan. Morgan was looking at me, her face clouded with worry. I felt I needed to say something, but words eluded me. Please, if it's you who looks just like her ex-fiancé, Grace might listen. I have no one else to ask. I can't bear the thought of spending another night worrying if Grace will return safely. Morgan revealed her feelings to me, who was still silent. It seems that both parents of the sisters had already passed away. Grace must be her only close relative. I was taken aback, seeing the surprisingly childish side of the cool and elegant Morgan. What? He doesn't look anything like him. Don't kid yourself. The one who pulled Morgan's tearful shoulder from behind was Grace. Steam was rising off her as she had just come out from the bath, but her face was more furious than I had ever seen. Grace, realizing that her plan had been heard, reverted to her usual composed demeanor. She swiftly brushed her long hair off her shoulder. I was thinking about you. Grace cut off Morgan's words. Don't manipulate my feelings to get your way all the time. Grace's anger was genuine. She stared at Morgan as if she was ready to throw a punch. Do you think you have the right to trample over my feelings, Steve's feelings, and everyone's goodwill? I'll say it because no one else will. You're arrogant? Who do you think you are? Unbelievable. Morgan was taken aback by being called arrogant. Indeed, not many people criticize Morgan. She probably knew that she looked lost for words, as if she had been hit by a truth she hadn't considered. But I know that C. Morgan isn't that shallow. Her kindness is just hard for others to see and gets misunderstood. In this situation, she should have had an honest conversation with Grace instead of going roundabout. C. Morgan is just worried about Grace's well-being. It's as simple as that. Grace, please don't say it like that. I don't feel like my feelings were trampled on. I quietly spoke to Grace. When I was consulted about this, I felt I was trusted by C. Morgan. That's a fact. Sure, the confession earlier was a bit shocking, but my respect for C. Morgan hasn't changed. I conveyed that to Grace. C. Morgan looked at me with a surprised expression. C. Morgan is perfect at work, a person to be admired, but now I also got to know a new side of her. A caring elder sister. It's the best. Grace looked stunned at my words. C. Morgan, is he your fanboy? He's not a dangerous guy, is he? Is everything okay? Grace, who was furious just a moment ago, now looked worried and asked C. Morgan. She even moved a little away from me, putting distance between me and C. Morgan. That hurts a bit. Hey, don't label me as dangerous. The sisters looked at each other in response to my words, and then they burst out laughing. Grace was even bending over, hitting the floor. C. Morgan also covered her mouth, trying to hold back her laughter. What? That's harsh, isn't it? In the end, the two sisters were laughing so hard they fell over, holding hands. It seems I helped them make up, but I felt a bit confused. From that day on, our cohabitation has been enjoyable. There were no secrets or grudges, and they treated me like a real family member. I savored what it felt like to be in a family after a long time. It even made me feel like going back to my parents' home. What was surprising was C. Morgan's swift change. She tried to keep me around using a romantic approach, but now she's telling me not to lay a hand on her sister. When she says that, I strangely start thinking about Grace. Not too long ago, I wouldn't have felt anything even if we were alone. But recently I feel a bit embarrassed, and it's troublesome. Tonight, C. Morgan is out on a business trip. I holed up in my room after watching a movie in the living room with Grace. I think about an hour had passed. It seems that drinking beer was a mistake, as I had to crawl out of bed to go to the bathroom. The corridor was already dark with the lights turned off. A light leaked out a little from Grace's room next door. It seemed that Grace was still awake. Listening carefully, I could hear an unfamiliar sound coming from Grace's room. Unable to suppress my curiosity, I peered in through the gap in the door to determine the source of the sound. Huh! As soon as I unwittingly raised my voice, I made eye contact with Grace, who was in the room. I thought it was dangerous, but it was too late. What I saw was Grace alone in the room, polishing an axe. Moreover, a faint smile was on her lips. Although I was waiting for her to scold me right away, there was no sign of the door opening. Unable to bear it, I confessed, "I'm sorry, I was just curious because I heard a strange noise through the door." I could sense Grace trying to suppress her laughter. The next moment, the door opened with a click and Grace appeared, wielding the axe with goggles on. I unintentionally fell on my rear. Grace looked down on me, seemingly triumphant over my clumsy fall. "Let's call it divine punishment," she said, raising her goggles to reveal her eyes. Grace flashed me a cheeky grin. I accept my divine punishment. I had no choice but to respond like that. But such fun days must also come to an end. Our cohabitation, which was initially agreed for a month, had continued for more than half a year. Lately, Grace has been going out and meeting various people. C. Morgan seemed very concerned about it. "It's about time for me to head back over there." "I'll be heading back soon," Grace said during a rare dinner together. I thought those words, which I had been dreading, had finally come out. C. Morgan too seemed to have the same thought as his chopsticks paused. "Why does she have to go back to the mountains? Can't we just continue living together?" Theo Morgan put down her chopsticks and asked Grace. Grace just replied, "I can't. When you go back, I'll be alone again. Do I have to spend my days praying for your safety again? Don't you understand how hard it is to endure the anxiety alone?" Words that seemed to blame Grace, yet it seemed to me that C. Morgan was hurt even as she spoke those words. "Grace, you're more arrogant than me." C. Morgan spat out the words with a resigned coldness. I couldn't just stand by silently. "C. Morgan, I'll always be by your side. Whoever you marry, that won't change. Please let me carry half of her worries." I truly meant that. See, Morgan would eventually marry someone, but for that person to share the worry and concern she has for Grace would be challenging. Because it is impossible that person would know Grace deeper than I do. That's why I just want to share her worries by her side, if that could lighten C. Morgan's burden even a little. C. Morgan was looking at me with surprise. It was far from her usual cool and beautiful demeanor at work. Because you're here, Morgan, I always think I'll make it back alive. So please wait here for me. Grace reached out and gently grabbed C. Morgan's hand. C. Morgan looked down and replied in a small voice. Okay. That was enough. I was seeing the bond of the Smith sisters right before my eyes. And just like that, Grace left a few days later. Several years have passed since then. Oh, I've got an email from Grace. I'm still living in that apartment with soon-to-be my wife, Morgan. As I peered at the laptop in front of Morgan, I saw an email from Grace. It was a message saying that she wouldn't be able to attend our wedding ceremony. Apparently, the weather had been bad and the summit attack was significantly delayed. She wrote in the email that she still couldn't climb the high-altitude base camp and that it would be impossible to descend and return home. When I opened the attached file, a picture of Grace making a peace sign with a tan face against the backdrop of a snowy mountain and blue sky appeared. Grace really loves being in the mountains. I imagine that she must often be exposed to harsh nature, but Grace is always smiling in the pictures she sends. Indeed, my late father used to say that Grace has a talent for climbing. He preferred Grace over me, Morgan said, forcing a smile. It was the first time I'd heard such a story. Apparently, Morgan soon realized that she would only be a hindrance if she went climbing with them. I was left behind on every climbing trip. Each time, I desperately sought my own talent, and that's led to who I am now. It might have been a painful childhood memory. For a moment, Morgan gazed off into the distance. There was another talent sleeping within her. I can't help but be impressed by the strength of Morgan, who believed in that and kept searching. If you don't give up, things will work out, Morgan said, shrugging off her past with a casual laugh. I nodded strongly. I wanted to know about her unknown efforts more than anyone else from the bottom of my heart. I think so. Once we're married, I'll tell her one wonderful thing about her every day. That will surely make our life even more wonderful. I won't lose to her and won't give up. The plan to start a business is also at a turning point. From now on, it's going to be the real deal. I guess this is what it means to set sail for a new life. We'll overcome anything together, no matter what. Looking at Morgan's face, I made that pledge in my heart.